Have you ever been playing a perfectly good game of Tropico 6 and then you see the dreaded guerrillas are attacking message? The very message that can ruin any perfectly running island, drive away all tourists, and set ablaze a key important building. In this video, I will cover what can cause these rebel or guerrilla attacks, what their impact has on your island, and how to prevent or mitigate them. Before we get started, if you like these kind of videos, press that like button. If you have a question or an alternative strategy, leave a comment below, and please subscribe to my channel to be notified when I release future videos. To get started, what is a rebel attack? A rebel or guerrilla attack is when a group of citizens that are fed up with how you're running your island band together to start attacking important buildings by setting them on fire and then running back into the mountains or forest. The more angry the citizens, the more frequent the rebel attacks. You can see the current rebel threat level and who is involved by going to the almanac and then clicking the conflicts tab. Any threat level at medium or high will start triggering rebel attacks. This rebel attacks cannot occur during the colonial era. So now that we know what a rebel attack is, what impact does a rebel attack have on your island? The short answer is painful. When rebels want to attack, the building they want to attack will shut down if they can start it on fire and get back without being taken out by the military. This will cause a loss of production, or even worse, it could be an electric plant, which will have a cascade effect as other buildings that were using that electric plant will also go offline. Also, all tourists will immediately head for the tourist port or airport and depart, causing all tourist infrastructure to become all expense and no income buildings. Plus, your tourist rating can take a hit until future waves of tourists come back to your island. So what triggers a rebel attack? First and foremost, it is the liberty happiness value. That is directly tied to rebel attacks occurring or not occurring. Military buildings will generate negative liberty in the surrounding area, so be sure to compensate for that when building military items. For the longest time, I thought liberty was the only factor that matters. But it seems that if the overall happiness value for the other categories are too low, rebels will still attack. I used to increase the liberty value to the high 80s or low 90s, but I was still dealing with rebel attacks until I dealt with other items like housing, healthcare, and fun. Then the threat level was reduced, and I was having no more rebel attacks. Another factor is what difficulty level you are playing at. Easy levels will see a reduced chance of rebel attacks, and you might only have to focus on the liberty happiness value, while the hard difficulty levels, the people are just itching to form up into rebel groups and attack your important buildings. So at the hard difficulty, if you do not take care of all happiness factor items, you will see an increased chance of rebel attack. Two other factors can increase the chance of rebel attacks. That would be what selections you have made for edicts and the Constitution. For the edicts, you will want to avoid martial law, as that heavily reduces the liberty value, along with increasing the chance they become rebels. The military police edict will cause the military to further reduce liberty in the surrounding area. The assembly ban will end all protests, but will reduce liberty and increase the chances of someone becoming a rebel. For the Constitution, on voting rights, if you have wealthy citizens vote or open ballot elections, there is a slight increase in the people wanting to turn rebel. On separation of powers, there is the no separation option, which will slightly lower your liberty value, which in harder difficulty missions could trigger more rebel attacks. On media independence, the state-controlled media can slightly decrease the liberty value. On personal rights, if you have total surveillance selected or security surveillance, you will have reduced liberty. And finally, what prevents rebel attacks? The first thing to consider is the liberty value. Be sure to build your media buildings like newspaper, radio, and TV towers. Be sure that you set a high budget value for these items, as that will increase the liberty in that area even further. Be sure to have the open non-faction aligned work modes for these media buildings, as having a faction aligned work mode on these buildings will reduce the liberty value it generates. Another thing to consider is to increase the overall happiness values, especially when playing scenarios in hard difficulty. Build some houses for your citizens, build high quality and quantity fun buildings like circus, movie theaters, or a golf course. Get your clinics and hospital built, and build enough churches, and don't forget to place a couple police stations. Some other things you can do is enact the Right to Arms Edict, which will increase liberty. Also, you can enact the policy of détente, as this reduces the number of rebels. Some changes to the Constitution can help. The biggest of the change is to make the Constitution under armed forces a pacifist state. This will reduce the rebel threat by 75%, which is huge, but it does have one big caveat. You cannot build any military buildings or have any operating military buildings, which can leave you open to rebel attacks if they still occur, or it still leaves you open to outside attacks from other countries or people. You can also set the true separation for the separation of powers. On personal rights, you can also set the privacy rights. A few other things you can try and use to reduce the rebel threat, but at least in my opinion, these don't work as well as they really should. And if you're at this point to try and use these items, you probably have other issues on your island, and you should really be working on your overall happiness before trying these. But the first of these is using the guerrilla patrol under the commando garrison to reduce the number of rebels. The second is to use the observation raid under Spy Academy, which reduces the number of rebels. The third is building the Overwatch Tower and selecting the Rebel Reconnaissance work mode. And the last item is to build the drone command and set whatever work mode you deem necessary. Like I said, these are all extreme options in my opinion, and you should just work on making your island better for all people instead of resorting to these brute force options. That is all for this video. If you like these kind of videos, press that like button. If you have a question or a different strategy, leave a comment below. And please subscribe to my channel to be notified about my future videos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.